What is the greatest it? I'll do it myself in history. Part 2. I'm surprised no one's mentioned Catherine the Great of Russia. She decided her husband was useless, which, granted, he was, and proceeded to set up a military coup to overthrow him. Even with the plan being discovered early, she dressed herself in military garb and marched with her new army, which had just sworn loyalty to her, down to Peter's palace, where he was forced to resign the throne, all without a single drop of bloodshed. At least until Peter turned up dead some time later under shady circumstances, but honestly for a military coup it was pretty non-violent. If saying, "Fuck it, I'm ruling Russia myself," isn't great, I dunno what is. I mean, it's right there next to her name for a reason. It's incredible, especially considering A. She's a lady. B. She wasn't Russian. C. She wasn't originally Russian Orthodox. Not a very old story. Manji or the Mountain Man lived in a very remote village of India whose route to nearby was blocked a mountain, and hence villagers had to climb it every time. And they had to do that daily to get essential supplies. During one of these trips, his wife fell down the mountain. He loved her a lot. He tried first to persuade the gov to do a mountain tunnel project there, but to vain. So he went on alone to break the entire mountain with just an axe. He did that for 10 plus years and finally succeeded. There is a Bollywood movie on him too. I feel like he went through a lot of axes lol. That's pretty impressive though. Nikola Tesla was tasked with lighting up the World's Fair, but Thomas Edison wouldn't allow him to use any of his patents, so Tesla had to invent a new light bulb that didn't use any of Edison's patents and could still have thousands made in time for the event. Desmond DOSS. Single-handedly saved from 50 to 100 men up on Hacksaw Ridge in Okinawa. His company was ordered to retreat when they were attacked by the Japanese, but instead he said, "Nah," stayed up on the ridge alone, unarmed, and dragged as many soldiers as he could to safety without any help. Even when he was shot by a sniper and riddled with shrapnel, he made sure they took another guy down the hillside before him. Edit. I'm aware there is a movie. I've read about him before and I know he's done more than just what is in the movie. I just didn't want to make a 3,000-word post about the many ways this guy is amazing. Australian stretcher bearer Leslie Allen did a similar thing on Mount Tambu. Carried out 12 men one at a time on his back alone. Received a Silver Star. James Clerk Maxwell was idolized by Einstein as being the father of modern physics. Not only did he formulate the classical theory of electromagnetic radiation, but just for shits and giggles he calculated exactly what Saturn's rings were made from using pure mathematics. It wasn't until Voyager 1 and 2 passed by and took photos in the early 80s did we get confirmation that Maxwell was right. He then calculated how to take a color photograph in 1855. This was then achieved in 1861 and is recognized as the first ever color photograph. Don't forget his advances in statistical mechanics. People like that just blow me away. Same with Pascal and Euler. Just brains that are different than most everyone else's. Juan Pujol Garcia was a Spaniard who created his own counterintelligence operation for the Allies during WW2. Initially, he approached British and American intelligence to offer them his services, but both countries rebuffed him. Undeterred, Garcia created a fictional persona as a pro-fascist Spanish official and got himself recruited by the Nazis, who directed him to travel to Britain to recruit agents. Instead, Garcia created a network of fictitious agents and sub-agents using publicly available information like newspapers and travel brochures. It was at this point that he again contacted Allied intelligence, and he was finally recruited. Garcia continued his work throughout the war, and for the same operation, he received both a knighthood from the British and the Iron Cross from Nazi Germany. The Nazis never realized that he was a double agent. Yes, in the lead-up to Overlord he confirmed reports that the Allied attack would come from Dover and wouldn't attack Normandy. Then, at the last moment he confirmed that the Allies in fact would attack Normandy. But it was too late for the Nazis to act on it. So afterwards the Nazis still trusted him as they would point to him and say, he was the only one who predicted the Normandy invasion. It was technical issues, as always, that meant the data got to us late. And supposedly this was one of the most important pieces of deception leading up to Overlord. In 1947 a guy named Thorstedal was trying to prove his theory that the Polynesian islands were settled by people from South America, not Asia. Nobody believed him because it was thought that crossing such a large ocean with the technology they had back then was impossible. So he decides to build a boat using only the tools and materials available at the time these migrations took place. And then he sailed that boat across the Pacific Ocean, nearly dying in the process, but ultimately making it to the Polynesian islands. Thorstedal was a bit of a madman. He also tried to prove that the ancient Egyptians could have crossed the Atlantic Ocean, by rebuilding one of their boats and, well, sailing across. It took 2 tries, but they did it. It's still pretty unlikely that the Egyptians actually did sail across the Atlantic, but it's neat to know that they could have. The doctor stationed in Antarctica that removed his own appendix. Goddamn. Wasn't that more like, fuck me, I have to do it myself? I read that in Gordon Ramsay's voice. When Nintendo turned down a collab with Sony. Then Sony said, fuck it, we'll do it ourself. The rest is history. To be fair, I think it's great they did. Nintendo and Sony are so different, there's plenty of room for both. Nintendo occupies a niche that I don't think they'll ever lose. Sony and Microsoft are locked in a never-ending war, yet Nintendo will always have their niche. Doesn't really matter who wins the console war. Nintendo will claim second place. When Pedro Serrano realized Jobu wasn't going to help him hit a damn curveball. The first thing that comes to thought here is the Louisiana Purchase. Congress planned on buying a small piece of the available land, but Jefferson used some interpretation fuckery to double the size of the U.S. without congressional approval. Seward's decision to buy Alaska from Russia. Best folly ever. When Julius Caesar decided to just up and fucking march into Rome to declare himself the military leader. Or how about his Rhine bridges that he built in a few days to cross an army over a river? Then went back over and demolished it just because his army could. It said the Germanic tribes saw his army do this and basically shit themselves. Imagine being some nomadic tribe and an invading force comes to a river. Builds an entire bridge, crosses it, shits in your land and then goes back home and destroys the entire bridge all in less than a week. The Roman armies would basically build a fortress every night for camp. They were nuts like that. Indeed. And the Rhine is no dainty river. If I am remembering correctly, he built 300 boats just for the endeavor. And another part of the reason they shit themselves is this. Caesar, having no option to go backwards, could obviously only proceed forwards towards the tribesmen, who were already fleeing German warlords. It was a literal massacre. Henry VIII couldn't get his way with the Pope, so he made the Church of England so he could do what he wanted. This man legit made his own damn religion, which millions still follow today, just so he could cheat on his wife Edith. He was already cheating on his wife, he wanted to divorce her to marry his mistress. No, made his own damn religion, which millions still follow today, just so he could cheat on his wife and his 4th wife. A man who was a tractor mechanic company owner made a good chunk of money and bought a Ferrari. He felt that the car wasn't as good as it could be, and it wasn't very comfortable, so he brought his complaints all the way to Enzo Ferrari, the owner of the company. Enzo insulted the man, saying a mere tractor mechanic didn't know how to make a sports car. That sparked a rivalry that lasts to this day. That man was Ferruccio Lamborghini. Tractor mechanic? Italian manufacturing magnate. Lamborghini tractors are still produced, although not by the car company. During the American Revolution, John Paul Jones sailed over to England to burn down British naval ships. He succeeded of course, and made back safely. After the revolution he was even pardoned by the town that he burned most of the ships in. John Paul Jones was a madman, badass and basically a pirate since he pillaged lots of villages too. Almost died a bunch. I think the pardon was in the 1990s. They also named a U.S. guided missile destroyer after him. The USS John Paul Jones. Also the name of the ship from the movie Battleship, but that's irrelevant. The dude in the war with wounded fingers. A doctor wouldn't amputate them so he bit them off himself. My great-grandpa did the opposite. They were gonna amputate his feet in WW2 and he said nah, so he went AWOL and treated his wounded feet on his own. When he came back with 2 perfectly good feet he basically said, I wanted to keep my feet and I wanted to keep fighting, and as far as I know he didn't get any kind of punishment, even though he was gone for weeks. Metallica fired Dave Mustaine, 1983, because he was sort of a control freak and wanted to take the band in a more prog, jazz metal direction. He was also abusing drugs and was known for violent behavior at the time. He went off and created his own band Megadeth, and over the next 30+ years he sold millions of albums and toured the whole world writing and controlling pretty much everything he's ever wanted. It seems they've all now patched things up. Dude is an absolute genius beast of a guitarist, songwriter. Also, when guitarist Hillel Slovak died, 1988, John Frusciante was a 19-year-old kid and a huge fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He was heartbroken and didn't want to see the end of his favorite band. So he went and auditioned to play lead guitar. He got the gig, helped take them to the top of the charts. The rest is history. Today he's considered one of the greatest rock guitarists out there. I do love Megadeth, but I wouldn't want to be in a band with Dave Mustaine. It's a weird win-win-win situation. Metallica didn't have to deal with Dave, Dave got to go and be Dave, and we got to enjoy both Metallica and Megadeth.